Welcome in. It is Big Ten today. It is great to have you with us on this Friday. We are presented by Gatorade. Dave Revson, Andy Katz. Lots to talk about. Had some action last night and, of course, get you ready for the weekend as well.
Well, on the men's side, Penn State, one of the hottest teams, not just in the league, but you could say in the region and the country. They are surging. On the women's side, there is only one GOAT, and she's the GOAT on the women, on the men, in any sport in college sports.
Yeah, we had some must-see TV on the Big Ten Network last night. We'll get to that in a moment, but first want to welcome in Mike DeCourcy, who joins us now. Hello, Mike. How are you on this fine morning?
I'm doing well, Dave, and looking forward to another terrific weekend of Big Ten action and that Sunday game. She left it a little short. I think maybe Caitlin Clark wanted to set the record at home, so instead she just went ahead and rang up 15 assists last night. What an amazing show she puts on.
Absolutely. Again, we're going to get to all the NCAA tourney talk, but let's start with her, our big story, her pursuit of history. 27 points last night as Iowa took down Penn State 111-93. It was not her best shooting night, under 35% from the field. The big story was her passing, a season high, 15 assists, many of them to Hannah Stolke, who scored 47 points for the Hawkeyes, 19th win in the last 20 games for them. Clark did have a career-high 12 turnovers. So let's bring you up to date. Clark needs 39 points now to pass Kelsey Plum and become the all-time NCAA women's scoring leader. Caitlin and the Hawkeyes in Lincoln Sunday to take on Nebraska, a game you can see on Fox, and they then play again Thursday at home against Michigan. Mike, kind of a frustrating first quarter for Caitlin Clark. Last night she got called for a charge that she clearly didn't agree with. After that, though, it felt like she kind of got back into her form, although not necessarily shooting the ball, but as a distributor.
Yeah, the passing is the part that everybody seems to miss with her. She's not just this person who comes out and shoots threes from the logos. She is a next-level passer, and she's going to finish with more than 1,000 career assists. She's now 5 away from that mark. Only 5 players prior to her in NCAA women's basketball history have reached that mark. If Iowa has a reasonably good Big Ten tournament, and they have a reasonably good, remember, I'm not saying they have to make the Final Four, but if they make the Sweet 16 and play in the title game, which they'll be seeded to do, if they do that, she could finish top 4 in assists as well as the women's career scoring leader. So I think that people are missing that this is not just somebody who shoots a lot and makes a lot. This is someone who also generates incredible numbers for her team. I worked it out yesterday when I was working on my piece that's on sportingnews.com about Caitlin right now and her approach on the record. And what I figured out is if you only count the assists as 2 points, because you'd have to really drill down to know which ones were threes for her teammates and which ones were twos. But if you only count them for twos, like Sabrina Ionescu, who is also a 2,000 to 2,500 point scorer and 1,000 assist person, she accounted for more than 40% of Oregon's points during her career. Caitlin is over 50, and that's without counting those three-pointers that she set up for her teammates. So it's just a ridiculous figure, and she does this night after night.
So I'm a shade younger than Mike, just a little bit, but I've been doing this for quite some time and covering college sports for, if you include in college, over 30 years. I have never seen what we are witnessing right now. And we've had some great players come through on the men's side, on the women's side, obviously individually in college football, all these other sports. I cannot remember a time where one person draws this kind of attention, not a team, not a collection of players, but one person, where she sells out every arena, and it's not even close when she's not there, when that particular team hosts. She has security around her. On the flip side, the way she handles all this, she makes sure she has time for her fans, old, young, doesn't matter, signs everything, takes the time, handles this with such humility. The press after, not on the game days. I've interviewed her like many people many times. She is just absolutely wonderful. She's articulate in the way she handles everything. She's a star. And in what just happened last night, she's also an unbelievably high IQ basketball player where you can tell she's getting this team ready for a title run. by what she did to help Hannah Stuelke's confidence, to make sure she could be a scorer like this, because the attention's only going to come even more so on her as these games progress. And she is now getting her team ready for a run. Young players, transfers, everything. And she's done a masterful job.
She has indeed. It's been really fun to watch. It was fun last night, and as you said, it was fun to see her set up Hannah Stuelke as repeatedly as she did. She had an enormous game. We talk about this pursuit of history now. Again, 39 points away. Just for some perspective, 11 times in her career she's had 40 or more points. So certainly could happen Sunday at Nebraska. For what it's worth, Lisa Bluter said afterward she hopes that Caitlin Clark sets the record at home. But Caitlin Clark said after the game, told the Big Ten Network, hey, we're just going out. We're looking to win the game at Nebraska, and we'll see where it goes from there. That wasn't the only Iowa-Penn State game last night. The men met up in State College. How about Mike Rhodes' crew? They topped Iowa at home, third straight win for the Nittany Lions. Andy talked about how well they're playing. This game was tied at 71 with 4 minutes to go, but Penn State finished on an 18-8 run. Ace Baldwin had 13 of those points. Penn State's now 6-6 in the conference. And, Mike, they are turning into one of those teams that no one in the conference wants to play. They are so disruptive. An Iowa team that almost never turns it over, and they could not hold on to the ball last night.
At this point, Penn State is learning that its approach works when executed properly. And they couldn't be sure of that when the league season started because it wasn't entirely put together and they didn't have it down. But right now, Iowa had 18 turnovers, Indiana had 13, Rutgers had 20. That's the three-game winning streak. Ace Baldwin has been magnificent over that stretch, averaging 19.7 and 8 assists and shooting 56% from the field. Ace Baldwin is learning that he can play with any point guard in this league, and it's going to be interesting. There's so many terrific point guards in the league. It's going to be interesting if the all-league team goes by position. It's going to be a real battle to see who are the guards, the starting guards, because there are so many great ones. And Ace has definitely put himself in that conversation. And Penn State now is right in the thick of the league race. They're a game out of the top four in the league. I think that's an amazing run for them. And, of course, it doesn't get easy down the stretch. Everybody has difficult games, but they have a chance to believe that they can compete with anyone now after this run.
Hat tip to you, my friend, because on this set yesterday, as we looked at coaches for potential coaches of the year, you said, what about Mike Rhodes? Make sure we include him. And he has navigated this season so well because early on, remember, they had such a frustrating run down in Orlando. Close, games got away from them. Then they had the Bucknell loss that was really frustrating for them. Then that game at the Garden against Georgia Tech.
Ridiculous call.
I mean,
terrible call.
Game was over. They should have won that game. And that was actually after coming back from 18 against Ohio State. So there was some momentum going, and then that happens to them at the Garden. You know, game against Northwestern, they were right there, couldn't hold that at home. So they've been so close, and now it's finally clicking. By the way, this run started without Kanye Cleary, who was their best player for most of the season, gets hurt, comes back, but at the same time, now off the bench. And, you know, clearly they have figured it out. They're getting a great play sort of from variety of players here, so it's not relying on someone just like Clary. And Ace Baldwin has figured it out defensively and the way he needs to contribute to this team. So, it's another coach that I think is doing an outstanding job. And to Mike's point, they're in the thick of this race for the double bye, for the single bye, which did not look like it was going to be the case just a couple of weeks ago.
Qudus Wahab playing really well here lately, too. And it's interesting because when I talked to Mike Rhodes earlier this year, he was telling me, I really thought that we would shoot the ball better than we have. We have better shooters than what they've shown. They're starting to shoot it well. These last couple games, over 50% from three-point range and from the field in general. So when they're turning teams over like they are and then shooting it as well as they are really tough to beat, something Iowa learned last night. It's a tough loss for the Hawkeyes, Mike, as they look to make some sort of noise here down the stretch.
Yeah, a little bit surprising to me that against the way Penn State plays defense, that you turn it over, okay, I get that. That's what Penn State's going to try to do first. But that you don't make open shots, because when you play against a pressure defense, you usually generate open shots, and Iowa had fewer of those than ordinary, and they also made a smaller percentage than they almost ever do, and that's a real problem. I think one of the things that Iowa needs to do is they need to take higher quality three-point shots. I've seen a lot of guarded, forced threes, even from great shooters like Peyton Sandford. There's not many threes that I wouldn't want him taking. But when the team is struggling like they are now, I'd like to see him take the high-quality ones because I know he's got a great chance to make those.
We know schedules play a factor in how these Big Ten tournament brackets play out. Their schedule is brutal down the stretch. Might be one of the hardest. Still have 2 games against Illinois. They got to go to Maryland, Michigan State, Northwestern. The next game is a hot Minnesota at home. It's not going to be easy for them to get the single bye. Like, they're going to be fighting in that group to stay out of Wednesday because of this schedule.
Yeah, as you mentioned, next game is at home for them against Minnesota. Penn State heads on the road to take on Northwestern. Our big stat is brought to you by Gatorade. Indiana and Purdue getting together tomorrow at Mackey Arena, a place to remember. The Hoosiers actually won last year. That was just IU's 26th win in 106 all-time trips to West Lafayette. Second game of the year between these two. The Boilers won convincingly last month in Bloomington. Hoosiers are playing a little bit better, Mike, winners of 2 of their last 3, but now heading to Mackey, and this is just kind of a different animal here. How do you see this one?
Well, when I have seen Purdue fully engaged, they have been so terrific, and we saw that in Maui, certainly, when they had to go through Gonzaga, Tennessee, and Marquette in 3 consecutive days. And then when Arizona came to Indianapolis with a great record and a lot of rep, and Purdue handled that as well as could be handled. And we've seen that as well when they got a chance to avenge loss number 1 to the Hoosiers at Assembly Hall. And now I think that the schedule is doing the Boilers favors because what do they have to play for at this point? Well, obviously they want to win a Big Ten championship, and that's still up for grabs. But what they really are playing for is March, and so they have to retool or refine the things that they do well, how they best get the ball to Zach, how they best play around him, Mason Gillis making sure that his role is 100% sharp. So they have all those things to work on. But when it comes to winning the actual game, I think it helps them to have that little extra juice. And wanting to get that sweep against IU, wanting to get the revenge for what happened a year ago, I think that gets them on their toes tomorrow, playing in front of Mackey. I know they're not going to want to lose a home game to Indiana in this circumstance. I think that's the ideal scenario. The schedule has been really good to Purdue to keep them engaged at a time when it can be really easy to wander a little bit. They've got so much that they've already secured. They'd have to really stumble to not be a 1. They'd have to give up a lot to not win the league, at least a share. So this is really good for them that they had to play the Badgers on Saturday in the showdown and now come back with this rivalry game.
Okay, I disagree with one thing Mike just said, because I think in the Big Ten and in the Big East, those are the 2 leagues in this country where the regular season title means something. Of course, everyone's judged by March, but I've been doing this long enough, and I know when I was in school and covering this league, the regular season title, certainly in men's basketball, has value. I know Matt Painter and they're going to be judged by what happens in March and April, but it matters to Big Ten teams to win it. And they still got to go out and win this. And this rivalry matters. So they want to get the sweep. They got swept last year. That stung, that Indiana swept Purdue and won at Mackey. So I think they want to put the hurt on Indiana. As for Khalil Ware, who did not play as well the first time, Mike Woodson at his news conference yesterday said that he did not practice. He's going to be, going through treatment, and they're going to have an update later Friday. He's got to play and be effective for them to have any chance. If he's not effective or if he doesn't play, I mean, they just don't have a chance against Zach Edey. I just don't see it. But so he has to be a factor. Mbako has to be a factor. And they can't allow the guards of Purdue to just go off with threes.
Yeah, Ware and Malik Renew just 13 points the first time they met. Remember, that was the largest margin of victory for Purdue in Bloomington since 1934. Beat them by 21 points. Michigan State hosting Illinois. The Spartans are a 10 seed in your bracket this morning. Mike, we're going to get to the bracketology a little bit later, but I can spoil that one for people. So how important is this game to Michigan State coming off that loss to Minnesota?
Well, I think that this game is enormous for the Spartans. And I keep waiting for them to become the team that they're capable of becoming, that the metrics say they are. They haven't performed that way. They did win a fair stretch of games before the Minnesota loss, but the team that we expected to see, or even the team that they suggest that they could be with how they've performed metrically, would have won at Minnesota, wouldn't have only scored 56 points. And I keep waiting for them to come around. And I look at the next 5 games. So they've got 3 at home and 2 against teams that are not in my field. So in a lot of ways, you'd say that should be a 4-1 or 5-0 stretch for the Michigan State team that they keep suggesting that they can be, but never quite deliver. So tomorrow would be the Illinois game would be a tremendous start for them. It's a quad 1 game. It makes a huge statement. The first time around, though, Terrence Shannon did not play for the Illini, so it's going to be a different challenge than what they faced the first time. A lot of what they might have learned will be helpful about particular individual players, but what they learned overall about how to deal with Illinois, it's going to be much different. Shannon changes them that much.
I agree with Mike, but that was also the game when they started to play well. Didn't win it, but they started to play well. And then they started to win a couple games right after that loss in Champaign. But to Mike's point, when you look at their schedule, home Illinois, at Penn State, at Michigan, then home Iowa, home Ohio State, they got to get some wins in this group because their last 3, at Purdue, home Northwestern, at Indiana, they're not good enough right now where you can pencil everything in for sure to win. So they've got to be in a position heading into those last 3 that if they lose at Purdue, they lose at Indiana, which could be desperate. You know, Northwestern has played them well, regardless.
Well. Yep.
And so they got to have a little bit of a cushion before those last 3, because they may lose 2 of those 3 at the end.
Yeah, have to continue to defend home court, which they've done. Their only home loss was to Wisconsin in Big Ten play this year. Illini, of course, playing well, winners of 5 of their last 6. A couple games on our airwaves tomorrow, including an interesting one early. Tyler Wall leading Wisconsin Piscataway for a matchup with Derek Simpson and Rutgers. Big Ten Hoops Saturday noon Eastern, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Coverage starts the tip-off show at 11:30 Eastern. And Mike, this is a Wisconsin team that has lost 3 straight games coming in. Now you try to get back on track against a Rutgers team that's starting to feel really good about themselves and is playing at home, where historically they've been pretty tough to beat.
Wisconsin has lost some of its offense along the way. In that 3-game stretch, some of the players, Stephen Crow, for instance, really has struggled to get engaged and involved in the offense at the level that he's capable of, and that has made a big difference. I mean, you're taking 10 points out of their usual production and not getting it, and then you're losing close games. So he's scored some, but not nearly at the average that he usually produces. I've noticed that in particular circumstances when he could be a threat, he's not allowing himself to be engaged in the offense. He's catching the ball and immediately giving it to a dribble handoff and then involving himself as a screener. I think he needs to look at the bucket. He's a very capable shooter, and when he's doing that, when he's looking at the bucket, he changes the defense because they have to react. He's shooting over 40% from 3, not on high volume, but still, that's a dangerous shooter. And I'm telling you, he's not looking at the bucket at all. I thought that late in the Nebraska game, him not looking at the goal was an enormous factor in Nebraska's ability to come back in that game, and it was a problem again against Michigan.
What concerned me about Wisconsin, I was there for the loss of Michigan. I didn't find that fight with them at the beginning. It was only when they were suddenly, whoa, we could actually lose this game. Right. In the second half, when they started to show some of that fight. I draw a parallel to the way I thought Northwestern played against Nebraska. Northwestern lost some close games last week on the road, come back, and they had fight, and they took it to Nebraska. You had loss to Nebraska on the road for Wisconsin, tough home loss to Purdue, kind of effort against Michigan. They got to take it to Rutgers. Like we're going to know in the first 5 minutes if Wisconsin's ready for a fight, because they're going to have to come out playing hard, 50-50 balls, being efficient, because this Rutgers team is now feeling good about themselves.
They are.
Jeremiah Williams, right now, is their leading scorer. You know, he finally got eligible after transferring, and with his issue with Iowa State and everything, and so he's now a major offensive factor. They win on the road at Maryland. They win at the road at Michigan, places that, you know, Wisconsin didn't win at Michigan just now. So Rutgers feeling good about themselves. And this can be a hard game. Wisconsin's got to bring it.
No doubt. And Wisconsin, 2 of their last 3 games have not been over a point per possession. It doesn't feel like you solve that at Rutgers. It is a hard place to generate points. And as you say, with Williams playing now, Rutgers feels a little bit better about where they are offensively as well.
This is something else. Stevenson.
Gable Stevenson and I were teammates at Apple Valley High School for 4 years. I remember the discussions of Gable being the next Cale Sanderson, the next 4-time undefeated NCAA champion.
While you look at Gable Stevenson, he is showtime.
The question is, can anybody keep it close?
Very much looking forward to seeing how Anthony Cassar can do against the #1 ranked wrestler in the country.
They made Gable out to be a god. But I said to Anthony, Gable is going to be a champion, but not this year. This is your year.
Now Cassar winding up a double leg. He's in on a single. He drops Stevenson with a double leg. Anthony Cassar with a 4-3 lead.
It's just one of those things where it's like, can you believe what you're seeing?
Anthony Cassar wins the Big Ten title.
That moment, just even in the moment, it's like, oh man, that was special.
Should be great tonight. That is after a fabulous wrestling doubleheader. It begins with a marquee matchup between Michigan and Nebraska. Then #1 Penn State collides with 3rd-ranked Iowa in a huge showdown. All starts tonight, 7 Eastern, presented by Cliff Keen Athletic, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Well, Shane Sparks will be in Iowa City for that second match, and he joins us now. Shane, I want to break both these matches down, but let's start with the one that you are calling, Penn State and Iowa. Between them, they've won 14 of the last 15 national championships. It's just staggering. Give people a sense of how big this duel is in the wrestling world.
Well, it's fitting, Dave, that we are talking about this duel on the weekend of the Super Bowl, because this has become the Super Bowl in college wrestling from a dual meet standpoint. This is a big one. I mean, these have been the 2 Goliaths, the 2 lions of the jungle in the Big Ten Wrestling Conference. Try to wrap your head around these numbers. Since the 2018-2019 season, these 2 teams combined overall 144-6. In the Big Ten combined 86-4. Those 4 losses, Dave, 3 of those are against each other. The only other loss was last week when Iowa fell to Michigan. I mean, these 2 teams have controlled the landscape of college wrestling. The only team that won a national title in that window that you spoke about earlier was Ohio State in 2015. This is a big one. It's always a packed house inside Carver Hawkeye Arena, a ton of energy, knowledgeable fans. It's a really fun night for wrestling. It is an awesome night with this doubleheader.
52 straight dual match wins, dual meet wins for Penn State. In fact, the last time they lost, kind of to your point, was 2020 against Iowa. So Penn State comes in as the favorite, clearly. Give people a sense of kind of what would need to go Iowa's way for them to have a shot to win this.
They're going to need to pull off some pretty big upsets. When I look at this duel, Dave, I think it's fair. I think many would agree. When you look at the 10 weight classes, Penn State's probably favored at 7. They're probably a pretty substantial favorite at about 4 weight classes. And then you have a few toss-up matches. So they're going to have to find a way to do something big that nobody is talking about or thinking about right now. And that's what makes it fun. These are the dual meets where you can do something and become legendary. But a few matches I'm really looking forward to. 125 pounds, Drake Ayala from Iowa. He's 2-2 in his last 4 dual meets. Braden Davis is a true freshman at Penn State. He's the only undefeated ranked wrestler in the country. He's undefeated at 14-0. This will be a big test for him at 141 pounds. Bo Bartlett of Penn State, he is the new number one. Now Real Woods is ranked second in the country following that loss in Ann Arbor last week. These guys met at the dual meet last year. Woods won that match 4-1. Looking forward to seeing the adjustments, how that one plays out tonight. And another really, really big one that everybody's excited about, 165 pounds, Mitchell Messenbrink. He's a redshirt freshman for Penn State. He is undefeated, brings a high pace, lights up the scoreboard, wrestling Mikey Caliendo of Iowa. Caliendo's only got the one loss to David Carr in the Iowa State dual meets. Here is a staggering statistic. Penn State's projected starters have a combined record of 109-6. Yes, 109-6. We are in mid-February, and they have 7 guys that are undefeated, led by 5 guys ranked number 1 in the country. Dave, I want to throw this in there, too, because I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah.
In dual meet takedowns, Penn State has scored 191 takedowns, and they have given up 16. They've scored 191 takedowns and have given up 16 takedowns. Like, this stuff, I'm just, every time I talk to you, David, I process these numbers in my head. My mind just spins, because I have got to think from a broadcasting standpoint. I've got to think about new adjectives, new ways to describe this Penn State team, and I'm running out. So, Dave, if you can help me out on that, I greatly appreciate and welcome it.
I will get the thesaurus out, and the next time we talk, I will have some adjectives to describe the Nittany Lions, but certainly dominant would be one of them, and we'll look forward to watching them tonight. Hey, the other match is nothing to sneeze at. Michigan and Nebraska. You mentioned it. The Wolverines won against Iowa last week. Give people a sense of how big that was, that upset for Michigan over Iowa, and what that meant in the wrestling world.
So for Michigan, talked about Iowa before. You know, Iowa had gotten beat a couple of times by Penn State, and then they got beat by Michigan last week. You got to go all the way back to 2018, the last time that Iowa lost a dual meet to a team other than Penn State, and it was against Michigan inside Carver Hawkeye Arena. Michigan is a really, really good team. They got some really solid transfers that came in, handful of All-Americans. They won the close ones last week. At 125 pounds, Michael DiAugustino beat Drake Ayala in the first tiebreaker. 157 was big. Will Lewan for Michigan. He beat Jared Franick in the first tiebreaker. And, of course, Sergio Lemley, a true freshman. Major decisions, Real Woods of Iowa, 14-2. Real Woods, since coming to Iowa City last season, had only suffered one other loss in that traditional all-black Iowa singlets, and that was in the national finals to Aliras of Northern Colorado last March. That was a huge first half. They won the first 5 matches, and they were off and running. Michigan's a really good team. And we talk about it all the time, Dave. In the Big Ten, if you don't bring your best, you are right for the picking. And Michigan's really good. Iowa, a little bit of an off night. I also would say this, Dave. I am not one of these guys where the sky is falling in Iowa City. I think this college wrestling season, quite frankly, is more about the dominance and how good Penn State. This team might be the best wrestling team in college wrestling history when it's all said and done. Iowa's still a very, very good team. Looking forward to watching them compete tonight. But getting back to that match you talked about with Nebraska and Michigan, that's going to be a great match. But Nebraska, they're really good too. And wrestling is all about dual meet matchups. There are some great matchups with Nebraska and Michigan tonight. Want to highlight a couple if I could. 141 pounds, Brock Hardy. He was a Big Ten finalist a year ago, fell to Real Woods. He's wrestling Sergio Lemley. How will that true freshman come off that super big high that he was able to accomplish last Friday night? But here's the big one, Dave. This might be the biggest match of the night in both duels. At least for me, it's one I can't wait. I'm licking my chops over this one. 149 pounds, Ridge Lovett, ranked number 1 in the country, wrestling Austin Gomez, now of Michigan. These two met a couple of years ago, 2022. Gomez beat him in the dual meet, and then he pinned him in the 2022 Big Ten championships to become a Big Ten champion then for Wisconsin. Both these guys, Dave, they come out and set the pace. They get to their ties. They go big. I mean, these guys are going to come out, and it's going to be batting practice on a wrestling mat, seeing who can hit the longest home run, because I'll tell you this, both these guys, you miss a fastball location on either Rich Levin or Austin Gomez, it's one of those where the pitcher, Dave, throws it and doesn't even have to look back because he knows it's going to be 450 feet into the stands. Two phenomenal matches. I'm just bummed out, Dave, I can't be calling them both because this is a wrestling fan's dream. Friday Night Wrestling tonight on the Big Ten Network.
Shane, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to have fun tonight.
I'll do my best,
Okay.
Dave. I will do my best.
All right.
Always appreciate coming on.
Oh, we love having you. Thanks so much. Shane Sparks. Mike's latest bracketology for Fox Sports out today. Still 6 Big Ten teams in the field, led by #1 overall seed Purdue, Wisconsin and Illinois, both 3 seeds, Northwestern at 8, Michigan State at 10, Nebraska at 11. No Big Ten teams among the first 8 out, so everyone else has some work to do. Let's start with Purdue, #1 overall seed. Mike, how much do you believe that matters this year for the Boilers, not just to be a 1 seed, but to be the #1 overall?
It almost doesn't matter at all because of the geography of this year's tournament. Their fiercest competition for the #1 overall seed at this point is Connecticut. Now, that doesn't mean that both of them can't slide back a little bit and bring Houston or Kansas or North Carolina into the conversation. But if it stays, if each team continues to follow its present track, it'll be UConn versus Purdue for the 1 overall. And neither of them wants what the other one wants. In Purdue's case, they want to come to Indianapolis, and then they want to go to Detroit for the Midwest region. In UConn's case, they want to take that little train ride down to Brooklyn and play there, and then take a little train ride up to Boston and play there. So neither one wants what the other one has, and yet they both are kind of competing for that 1 overall. In UConn's case, they're the reigning champions. It doesn't matter even prestige-wise. And for Purdue, I think after last season, it doesn't matter either. They just each want to go where they want to go, and they can each guarantee it. Both UConn and Purdue can guarantee to go where they want, Indy and then Detroit for the Boilers, if they continue on their present track, lose very few between now and Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. This is a year where the geography helps both of them. Purdue is a lock for Indy, UConn's a lock for Brooklyn, and they're trending to go Detroit, assuming they get through the first 2 rounds, and then Boston. So if everything holds, they are clearly the 2 best teams in the country. We could feel pretty good that, I know, can't assume, but
right.
If they both get the Phoenix, that would be great for the sport, for both fan bases, for all of us to watch. They are the 2 best teams, and everything is trending in that right direction. And Purdue, with its overall resume, their quad 1, quad 2, they should be there.
Yeah, 15 quad 1 and 2 wins. No one else in the country has more than 13 at this point. Hey, Mike, what about Minnesota? I mean, we showed your bracketology. I mentioned not among the first 8 out. Minnesota has been playing well here. They've got wins over teams that are in your projected field. What do the Gophers need to do to get in this conversation?
Well, I think what they're doing at this point is similar to what Pitt is doing in the ACC or Xavier in the Big East. They're winning a lot of games recently and some quality games. Pitt won down at Duke, for instance. So now they're kind of looking at it like a long car ride. Are we there yet? And the answer for all of them is in the numbers. And for the Gophers, the numbers, you can't find a number other than the overall 1-loss record that says they're an NCAA tournament team at this point. Their record metrics, they're around 73 in strength of record, which is one of the key metrics for getting into the tournament. And then the predictive metrics, the Ken Palm and Ned and those sorts of numbers that talk about how powerful you are, aren't saying enough flattering things either. The good news for the Gophers is the schedule down the stretch. They have 5 quad 1 games left. Do they need to win all 5? No. But they'd have to win a majority of those games, at least 3, to feel like they could force their way into the conversation and onto the board in the selection room in advance of Selection Sunday.
So a couple things. First with Minnesota is that I think their magic number is 12 in the Big Ten. Now, how do you get to the 12? To Mike's point, it's not just the number 12. It's the fact that to get to 12, they're going to have quad one wins.
Right.
Great scheduling here at BTN because I'm going to be at 3 of those road games where they're at Illinois, at Northwestern, and at Purdue. I have the order a little mixed up because at Purdue's next week, but they have opportunities here that Pitt and some of the other schools in these other leagues don't,
right.
And that's the advantage to Minnesota. Also, if they can be in position to get a double bye or even just the single bye, they're going to be playing at home at the Target Center. So another potential advantage to get another quality win in the Big Ten tournament. They could play this out to Selection Sunday. They're the one team. We've been searching for that other team. Who could be potentially 7th? It's Minnesota.
All of those remaining regular season quad one games are on the road, but to your point, we always forget about the Big Ten tournament. You can help build your resume there, and those would be kind of de facto home games for them. Northwestern fans kind of on pins and needles here as they await news on the injury to Ty Berry. That being said, Mike, you have them as an 8 seed right now. They do have that loss to Chicago State. They have some great wins. I mean, beat Purdue, beat Illinois. They have a win over Michigan State. They nearly beat Purdue a second time, took them to overtime on the road. How high can Northwestern get?
Yeah, don't forget the Dayton win as well, Dave.
Right.
That's a nice one. That's a team that's climbing up the bracket also. I think the problem for Northwestern is, in some ways, is that their schedule doesn't provide them a lot down the stretch. You mentioned earlier that it's not the strongest down the stretch, which means that they really have to excel here. They have one quad one opportunity left, so any loss they take would be a negative. So I think they need to be the best version of themselves down the stretch. And if they can do that, I think the key for them, I have them as an 8. The bracket matrix consensus has them as a 9. So they need to get out of that 8-9 game and up to a 7. If you could get into that 7 range in this bracket, then I think you really have a shot to do some damage. You don't want to have to play, let's say, a UConn in the second round. That would not be great news.
But I would say that 7 or a 10 because the 2s are going to all be beatable. You got to get to that second round. The other thing with the double bye is Northwestern and Nebraska do have the advantage because they both have a Purdue win. So in any tiebreaker, that could help either Northwestern or Nebraska get that double bye and get that 4th spot with the assumption that Purdue, Illinois, and Wisconsin are the other 3 double byes.